today's event. Would you please join me in a round of applause for the 111th Army Band, under the leadership of Commander of the Band, Chief Warrant Officer 5, Curtis Hiani. Now, again, Chief Warrant Officer 5 did not tell me to say this, so I'm going to say it. I would also add that Chief Warrant Officer 5 Hiani is also the Vice Chief of the Army National Guard bands across the entire nation. That involves planning, training, recruiting, and evaluating in all 50 states and U.S. territories. The 111th Army Band will be back for a special number during the interlude. So we're so very happy to have you here, Chief Warrant Officer 5, not only locally, but in a national presence. So in honoring the spirit of sacrifice for our fallen on this Memorial Day, we begin with the annual Parade of Colors of our veterans groups, our local and state and international partners, and their presentation of floral lei for fallen comrades. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated.
Forces Association, Chapter 8.
Our heartfelt appreciation to each of our veterans organizations represented, our state, federal, and community and international partners, and all of our veterans here today. You honor us with your patriotism and with your presence. And thank you also to Akamu Campbell, our Triple Office Assistant for OVS, for announcing them. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please stand as the Joint Services Color Guard and our Hawaii Royal Guard present the national and state colors. Color Guard, present the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, performing the national anthem in Hawaii Pono'i is the 111th Army Band. Color guard, post. Please be seated. How about another round of applause for the 111th Army Band, our Joint Color Guard, and our Royal Guard. At this time, I'd like to ask Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Chris Guardiz of the Hawaii Army National Guard to give our invocation. Chaplain, if you would, please.
Please bow your heads in prayer with me. Lord God, we invoke your presence on this solemn Memorial Day ceremony. Let us pause to pay tribute and respect to our service members who have paid the supreme sacrifice for our freedom and security. We give recognition and thanks for the courage and strength of these selfless servants who lie in peace in cemeteries around our country, in foreign lands abroad, and unmarked graves still yet to be found. As we honor them with memorial wreaths, rifle salutes, and the playing of taps, inspire us with the renewed faith and greater devotion to our country that was purchased with the blood of those we honor today. Impress upon us the importance of sacrificial service, patriotism, and unity to our country, the great state of Hawaii, and our fellow citizens. Amen.
Thank you very much, Chaplain Guardiz. Our Memorial Day theme this year is A Grateful Nation Never Forgets. Now, Memorial Day stands as a solemn American tradition that honors the sacrifices of past generations across the centuries. It is a day we dedicate to the fallen, to those who fell in defense of the ideals, beliefs, and values we hold sacred. Today, we extend tributes of thanks and share collective memories of our troops as people gather here and at other cemeteries, memorials, and private sanctuaries to reflect on the valor of the fallen and the bond of freedoms that unites Americans. We honor and pay tribute to our Gold Star families. It is also an opportunity to assure that these brave men and women, your family members, your neighbors, your co-workers, and many more will not be forgotten and may remain forever in our hearts. To all of them, and on this hallowed day, we extend our deepest respect and gratitude. Korean War veterans, past and present, will be highlighted today and at next month's 73rd anniversary of the start of that conflict. Additionally, in July, it will be the 70 years since the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement that brought an end to hostilities that killed 2.5 million people. Like we have previously honored our World War II veterans, the greatest generation, our Vietnam warriors. It's been over 50 years since the start of that conflict. And our Gold Star families at events like these. We will now be honoring in the future our Gulf War veterans, those with Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Global War on Terrorism. And this ceremony, though, today highlights the sacrifices of our Korean War veterans. Would all Korean War veterans present today please stand if you are able to? Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for them. Thank you all for representing your fallen comrades and for your distinguished service. You may be seated. Please let me direct you to our principals this afternoon on our upper stage. On the dais, our hosts, the Honorable Josh Green, MD, Governor for the state of Hawaii, and his wife and the First Lady of the state, Mrs. Jamie Green. Major General Kenneth Hara, Adjutant General for the state of Hawaii, and his wife, Myong. Now, with so many distinguished guests present today, please accept my inadvertent acts of omission right up front. I'd like to thank each of you for being a part of today's ceremony. I've said it many times. Each of you are special to us. Before recognizing some of the dignitaries, let me ask that you please hold your applause until prompted. Seated with us today are, from our federal congressional delegation, the Honorable Ed Case, U.S. Representative. The Chief of Staff for the City and County of Honolulu, Sam Moku. Chief of the Honolulu Police Department and former State Adjutant General, Chief Joe Logan. Dr. John Henry Felix, a distinguished veteran and community leader, and the reason why we have the Hawaii State Veterans Cemetery today. Our flag and general officers and those representing our senior military leadership in the Pacific. Admiral and Mrs. Sam Paparo, Commander, U.S. Pacific Fleet. Lieutenant General and Mrs. James Gerard, Deputy Commanding General, U.S. Army Pacific Command. Lieutenant General and Mrs. William Journey, Commander, United States Military, Marine Corps, Forces Pacific. Rear Admiral and Mrs. Michael Day, Commander, 14th Coast Guard District. Major General and Mrs. Joshua Rudd, Chief of Staff, Indo-Pacific Command. Major General and Mrs. Joseph Harris, Commander, Hawaii Air National Guard. Executive Director, U.S. Marine Forces Pacific, and Mobilization Assistant to the Commander of Indo-PACOM, Major General Mark Hashimoto. Former State Adjutant Generals, Major General retired Bob Lee, Major General retired Darrell Wong, and I thought I saw Major General Edward Correa trying to sneak into the back, so I think he's in the back there. Brigadier General and Mrs. Patrick Miller, Director of Logistics, Engineering and Force Protection, Pacific Air Forces. Brigadier General and Mrs. Stephen Logan, Deputy Adjutant General, Hawaii National Guard. Brigadier General and Mrs. Kirk Gibbs, Commanding General, Pacific Ocean Division, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Brigadier General Anthony Mosteller, Commander, U.S. Space Forces, Indo-Pacific. Command Chief Master Sergeant Zandra Fox, Senior Enlisted Leader of the Hawaii National Guard. Command Chief Master Sergeant Leomel Abueg, Senior Enlisted Leader, U.S. Space Forces, Indo-Pacific. Command Chief Master Sergeant Marianne Martin, Command Chief, Hawaii Air National Guard. Mr. and Mrs. Francisco Polino, Female Liaison to U.S. Indo-PACOM. Our Senior Veterans Affairs Leadership in Hawaii. Director, VA Pacific Island Healthcare, and retired Vice Admiral, Dr. Adam Robinson, and Mrs. Robinson. Director, Stacy Bonnet, Veterans Benefits Administration, Regional Office. Director and Colonel retired Jim Horton, National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. Great job today, Jim, at Punch Bowl. Former Punch Bowl Director, Colonel retired, and Mrs. Jean Casignetti. Members of the Governor's State Advisory Board on Veterans Services. Our state legislators, State Senators, Senator Henry Aquino, Senator Kirk Favela, State Representatives, Representative Natalia Hasi-Burdick, Representative Rachel Lamasau, Representative Scott Matayoshi, Representative Darius Kila, Representative Gene Ward. Our Sitting Council of Honolulu Council members, Council Member Esther Kia Aina, Council Member Augie Toba, State Cabinet members and officials, Mr. Ed Sniffen, Director, Department of Transportation. Mr. and Mrs. Michael Vincent, Deputy Director for Administration, Department of Law Enforcement. Ms. Sharon Hurd, Chairperson, Board of Agriculture, and Director for the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Mr. and Mrs. Frank Pace, Administrator for the Hawaii Office of Homeland Security. We also have a large contingent of our Foreign Consulate Corps and consulate officers, our honorary consul generals, Mr. and Mrs. Jeffrey Lau of Belgium, Mr. Dennis Saleh of Germany, Mrs. Annie Kanashiro of Tonga, Mr. Seo Young Lee, Consul General of the Republic of Korea, Captain Sukun Oh, Defense Attaché, Republic of Korea, Ms. Hoyoung Park, Consul with the Korean Consulate, Mr. Yutaka Ooki, Consul General of Japan, Mr. Yuichi Kajiya, Consul with the Japan Consulate, Ms. Isabella Silk, Consul General of the Republic of the Marshall Islands, Mr. Mike Kitchen, Consul General of New Zealand, Ms. Grace Ann Bulos, Consul with the Philippines Consulate. I saw Ms. Jennifer Sabas in the back, former Chief of Staff of the late U.S. Senator Danny Noy. I also saw Alan Ho, the CASA, Civilian Aide to the Chief of Staff of the Army, also in the back. Alan, thank you for joining us today. And also want to recognize a former director for the Hawaii Youth Challenge Academy, Command Sergeant Major J.D. Williams is with us today as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me now in a stirring round of applause for these distinguished individuals. And thank you all very much for coming again today. Now, it's my honor to introduce Major General Kenneth Hara, who will offer welcoming remarks and introduce Governor Green. Now, I did rewrite a little bit of General Hara's bio. I did tell him, give him an advance disclaimer. I did add some things to it, so we'll see how that works out when we go through it today. Major General Hara assumed his duties as the Adjutant General for the State of Hawaii, Department of Defense on December the 6th, 2019. He was commissioned a Lieutenant of Infantry in 1987 through the Officers Candidate School Program of the Hawaii Military Academy. His previous assignments include being dual-hatted as the Deputy Chief of Staff, Army National Guard, Operations G3, 8th United States Army, Korea, Commanding General of the Hawaii Army National Guard, Chief of Staff of the Joint Staff, Hawaii National Guard, Commander of the 29th Infantry Brigade, Combat Team, and Commander of the Operational Coordination Center, Regional Command South, Afghanistan, Security Forces Assistance Advisor Team, Commander, 1st Squadron, 299th Cavalry, and Commander, 2nd Battalion, 299th Infantry. General Hara served in 3 combat tours in Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. He was also dual-headed status commander of the Joint Task Force 5-0 in support of the Kilauea volcanic eruption and in support of Hurricane Lane recovery. As a Director of Emergency Management for the state, he was an integral part of working with the State Department of Health, healthcare institutions and community partners, and Lieutenant Governor Green at the time in response for the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in one of the lowest virus infections and death rates for Hawaii in the nation. General Hara holds a Master's of Strategic Studies from the U.S. Army War College, a bachelor's degree in Human Services from Hawaii Pacific University. His awards and decorations include the Combat Infantry Badge, Army Aviator Badge, the Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with medal, with Oak Leaf Cluster, Meritorious Service Medal with 3 Oak Leaf Clusters, Army Commendation Medal with Silver Oak Leaf Cluster, and the Army Achievement Medal with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters. He is married to the former Myung Park, and they have 5 children: Kristen, Julia, Nicole, Justin, and Alicia. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Major General Hara.
Yeah, I told him to keep it short. Obviously, he cannot follow instructions. Governor Green, First Lady Jamie Green, my lovely wife, Myung, thank you for coming. Admiral Paparo, Mrs. Paparo, Lieutenant General and Mrs. Gerard, Lieutenant General Journey and Mrs. Journey, fellow general officers and flag officers, Mr. Moku, representing Mayor Langiardi, to the members of the Hawaii State Legislature. I thought I saw Senator Keoho Kaloli sneak in too. Yeah, he didn't get mentioned, but thank you for joining us. The City Council members of the Consular Corps, Chief of Police, Chief Logan, other distinguished guests, community leaders, and especially our veterans and their families. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon on the hallowed grounds of the Hawaii State Veterans Cemetery. If you look out here at the majestic mountains, that's just gorgeous, and a perfect place for the rest place of our fallen. Today we affirm our sacred duty to express our enduring gratitude and to join the nation in honoring the men and women who had given selflessly and sacrificed in service of their country. In her poem entitled, "Let Us Never Forget," Margaret Schroeder wrote, "Let us never forget freedom, that treasured jewel rare, or those who gave their lives for it, that we might live in despair." Memorial Day provides us the opportunity to acknowledge the legacy of our nation's heroes by keeping the memories of their sacrifices fresh, so that these memories continue to carry on to future generations. Memorial Day also gives us the opportunity to give thanks to those who gave their lives so we can live without despair. Let us never forget their sacrifices. Appropriately, the theme for today's ceremony, "A Grateful Nation Never Forgets," serves as a poignant reminder that freedom is not free, and that it is our sacred duty to honor and respect our fallen heroes. Let us never forget their sacrifices. Now it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce the Governor of the State of Hawaii, the Honorable Josh Green, MD, a leader who has dedicated his life as a medical doctor and to public service, a staunch supporter of our service members, veterans, that has worked to improve our residents' access to health care, education, and employment opportunities. Governor Green recognizes that the strength of the nation lies in the courage of the dedication of brave soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, guardians, and Coast Guardsmen, serving and protecting us so that we can live without despair. So please join me in welcoming Governor Green to the podium. Thank you.
Aloha. As we stand here in this extraordinary setting, perhaps the most beautiful cemetery in all of America, it moves me. It moves me to hear from these dedicated soldiers. It moves me to see these dedicated soldiers before us who survived Vietnam. Forgive me, who survived the Korean War. And it moves me to imagine all of the sacrifices of the families. And I just wanted to say that before my formal comments, because I can tell you from this vantage point, to see you and know what you went through is extraordinary. So mahalo to all of you who are with us today. Now thank you, Major General Hara and Colonel Ron Han. You are extraordinary individuals, and thank you for bringing this event together. It's a solemn occasion. We thank you both for your service to our state and our country. It's important that we remember, and that's why our theme, A Grateful Nation Never Forgets, is here today. We're honored to see Congressman Case. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. State representatives and senators, council members, generals and admirals, all of you who have served. Coming together in this way, celebrating this life that we have that's free for this child that sits with us today. That's why we are here, but we honor you today. So thank you. We acknowledge all of you for your service. Now this year, as always, we come together to honor all the men and the women who paid the ultimate price for their service to our nation and our state. And this year we're marking this moment as we recognize the 70th anniversary of the end of the Korean War. As it was mentioned before, 73 years ago the war began, 70 years ago it ended. So we recognize these living Korean War vets. Thank you again, gentlemen, for being here and for your service. Mahalo. Let's give them another round of applause. There he is. And though it's a solemn day, it's also a day of pride because of the service that so many have given to protect our land, to be free, to be the home of the brave, as it's always said. From Albert Asal to William Young, Hawaii lost more than 400 individuals in the Korean War. They were young people. They were young enlisted personnel. seasoned non-commissioned officers, junior officers. They serve the Army and the Air Force, the Marines and the Navy. Their last names are familiar to us. They read like a roll call that you would hear anywhere across our islands today. These are families that are among us now, and their hometowns are all across Hawaii. Our hearts hurt for their families. They are broken when we imagine the ultimate sacrifice, but we're forever proud of the loved ones that we have for their selfless service. It's been reported by our country that in the 4 major military engagements since World War II, Hawaii suffered the highest per capita losses. More sacrifice per capita has come from Hawaii than any other state. Also, the casualties in Korea were greater than any other U.S. state when considering our size. It's something that we should always recognize here in this beautiful place. Now, in modern times, our two nations, U.S. and South Korea, are continuing to honor the fallen. And so thank you, leadership from Korea and military. Thank you for being here today. As recently as 2021, in ceremonies across our state, the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency returned the remains of 68 additional Korean servicemen to the South Korean president. And at that same time, South Korea also repatriated the remains of 6 of our service members believed to be Americans, as recently as 2021. In a ceremony at that time, the Indo-PACOM Admiral Aquilino, who is dear to us, who is one of our leaders, of course, noted that the Korean War brought two nations side by side to fight for and defend the values embodied in the ideals of freedom. I'm sure that all of us here today are on the same page, and we know very well the fullness of what Admiral Aquilino said, that it is true. It cannot be said too often. Thank you for your service. Now, we can't thank everyone. We can't thank today Anthony Kaho'ohanohano from Maui because he was killed in battle. You have no doubt heard his name before. On his behalf, his family received the Presidential Medal of Honor from then President Barack Obama for his incredible valor against enemy troops. His deeply compelling story is memorialized on the Defense Department website. And it's tough to imagine anyone reading that telling of the story without being moved to tears. It's only fitting that the National Guard Armory in his hometown of Hu'unene on Maui bears his name. We have heroes in our midst. You can see the Medal of Honor presented to Herbert Hilila'au at Fort DeRusi. He was born in Waianae, and his courage in Korea, above and beyond the call of duty, was described at Heartbreak Ridge. It's another reason that we each should remain proud of our troops and grateful for their service every day. Hawaii wasn't even a state when they gave their lives for this country. We weren't even a state. At the same time, it can be said for thousands and thousands of veterans from across Hawaii who fought bravely in many of our U.S. wars and endured tough terrain and unforgiving weather, unlike this, all in the name of honor and service above self. We can't hear about war, and we can't talk about war, sacrifice, or service and the Medal of Honor without taking a moment to remember our late U.S. Senator Dan Inouye. As a member of the famed 442nd Regimental Combat Team of World War II, our senator distinguished himself in battle. And he then went on to spend a life of continued distinguished service to the state of Hawaii, who we all endeavor to live up to that standard. Some 48 service members with Hawaii ties have received the Presidential Medal of Honor. And everyone doesn't get singled out in this way, but everyone does contribute through their own achievements, small and large. I remember a soldier, a young man, John Golner, who became a dear friend of ours, who worked in government, who served in Iraq, who became sick there, and ultimately lost his life at an early age, in his early 40s. We remember him as well on this day. The Korean War has been referred to us and some as the Forgotten War. But as we know today, as we remember these great individuals who stood, a grateful nation never forgets, and neither will we. Hawaii can never forget its disproportionate contribution in terms of those killed or wounded or those who served. Compared to the states in the continent, we've had 3 times as many wounded and 3.5 times the number of casualties in that conflict. Some 456, as I mentioned, passed away on the battlegrounds with names like Bloody Ridge, Heartbreak Ridge, and Pork Chop Hill. And their mothers and fathers had to endure that memory. They fought alongside fellow troops from the mainland. Our Hawaii troops endured racism, as soldiers from the continent misidentified them as South Koreans. Yet their valor, their personal integrity, and devotion to their mission and their country enabled them to perceive and fight for our nation. You've heard that hindsight makes 20/20 vision, and so it is that finally, the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. was dedicated in 1995, some 45 years after the war started, and well after the 1982 ceremony that declared the Vietnam War Veterans Memorial. We assure you, families, we in Hawaii have not forgotten. And so, we know that Hawaii has always and will always honor these veterans. Hawaii's own President, Barack Obama, delivered a Memorial Day address at Arlington on the 60th anniversary of the end of the Korean War. Americans had troops active in Afghanistan at that time, and he was mindful of the mothers and fathers, the wives, husbands, and children of those who were deployed, as well as those he honored in his speech after their deaths in combat. He had not forgotten either. Like he did that day, we thank you today, this special day of remembrance. More than that, though, each day, as we go about our state, we hug those we love, enjoy the beauties of our home, and the freedoms we enjoy because of you veterans. We must be mindful of the strength and resolve that each of you showed in service to your country these many years, so that we might be able to experience these liberties today. To paraphrase President Obama, I encourage everyone to always remember, to never forget the price that each of you have paid for us as families. Each of you who trained and marched and fought and lost bodies along the way, you deserve our never-ending gratitude. We thank you today and always. We love you. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, General Hara, for your welcoming remarks, and for Governor Green for your poignant keynote today. We're honored to call upon the 111th Army Band for a special selection at this time under the skillful direction, again, of Commander of the Band, Chief Warrant Officer 5, Curtis Hiani. This selection is entitled At Dawn They Slept, composed by J. Bobcott. Now, At Dawn They Slept starts softly and tries to depict the U.S. military presence at Pearl Harbor in the days preceding December 7th, 1941. The main theme of the work is one of tranquility and beauty, depicting a day in the late fall of 1941. The mood changes as dawn breaks on December 7th. A distant bugler with the sounds of approaching planes are heard, as well as the chimes representing the attack at 7 a.m. The conflict begins with a percussion, brass, and woodwind battle in angular, dissonant, and fragmented musical lines. This section leads to a climax where again the mood changes to one of strength and resolve. The piece ends with the return of the main theme, softly at first, but finally building to a magnificent conclusion. This selection is a musical tribute to those in eternal sleep at Pearl Harbor. Ladies and gentlemen, the 111th Army Band. Another big hand for the 111th Army Band. We will now have the presentation of the State of Hawaii Wreath to honor our fallen warriors. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as Governor Green, Major General Hara, Representative Cates, and career war veterans Tommy Tahara and Bob Imose present the State of Hawaii Memorial Day wreath. Our first wreath bearer is Sergeant Letitia Morissette. She was born in Haiti, but hails from Boston, Massachusetts. She would like to encourage those who are contemplating a career in the U.S. Army to do so. Her aspiration is to apply for Army psychological operations and complete 20 years of service. Now we call upon the senior leaders of our armed forces in the Pacific to lay a wreath to honor our fallen soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen, and Guardians. Admiral Paparo, Lieutenant General Gurney, Lieutenant General Gerard, Major General Rudd, Brigadier General Evans, Rear Admiral Day, and Brigadier General Mostler. Would you please come forward? Our second wreath bearer is Specialist Christopher Forker. He hails from Panama City, Florida. He's a 12N, which is a horizontal construction specialist. He wants to make the U.S. Army a 20-year career. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand if you are able to, while military honors are presented, and also as our joint color guard move into position. A rifle salute by the Hawaii National Guard Honor Guard team, the playing of taps by the 111th Army Band. I'd like to ask if you please render appropriate honors during the rifle salute and the playing of taps. Thank you. Please be seated. Before closing our ceremonies today with the service medley, the benediction, and the posting of the colors, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the entire staff of the State Office of Veteran Services for their outstanding efforts to prepare for today's program. Thank you especially to the Hawaii State Veterans Cemetery staff and our state maintenance team, to Cemetery Operations Manager Rob Lee, State Maintenance Supervisor Kaleo Texera, and their respective staffs. The Joint Color Guard before you today, the Royal Guard also before you today, the 111th, the incomparable 111th Army Band, under the direction of Chief Warrant Officer 5 Curtis Iani, the 300+ Hawaii Girl Scouts and their families who posted flags and leis yesterday, our Army and Air Guardsmen for supporting the ceremonial taskings today. Thank you also to the Hawaii Youth Challenge Academy under the direction of Director Sina Atunoa and the many volunteers behind the scenes, some of which are listed on the back of today's brochure. Major Retired Jeff Hickman, the DoD Public Affairs Officer. We have just one more annual tradition in our ceremonies. Please join our veterans and our military members in celebrating their service while the 111th Army Band plays a military medley of our service songs. Please feel free to stand and sing, if you're able to, with your loved one while your service song is played.